What up, Raf leaders? Welcome back to my channel. I'm walking here on the Red Road in Providence. I thought I'd give you an update on what's happening in this neck of the woods. So behind me, right, all these buildings behind me, that's Sheriff. So Sheriff Construction Group, they're building all these new apartment buildings in the neighborhood. All right, that's Sheriff. The same group that has Sheriff Security and Sheriff Hospitals. This is Sheriff's housing development. On the other side, there is a lot of vacant land. People tell me that is Baishan Lin. So there was a Chinese investor who was operating in Guyana for a couple of decades now. They were sold this land on the south side of Red Road, and I'm told that that is land that they were developing. There's still a whole lot of construction. Yeah, there's some construction going on there in the background. But what we're approaching is another housing development belonging to a Guyanese American business person and doctor. Person named Basdeo, I think Dr. Basdeo. Now that is what we're passing right now. It's called the Richmondville, right? So behind me, that's the entrance to Richmondville, right? That's Richmondville housing development. Now the Richmondville housing development has its own story, which is what we want to talk about now. We're in political season, and that's called the silly season for a reason. There's a whole lot of shenanigans that take place during the political silly season, and this silly season is no exception. It all started when a number of journalists started asking questions of an investor named Basdeo from New York, who claimed to have obtained land to build this housing development from the current administration. So that whole housing development behind me is Richmondville. Right, let me see if I can get you a reverse Richmondville looks like, right? This is the Richmondville housing development. As you can see, that is the entrance. Just past it a little bit. But that's the entrance. There are a couple of guys standing outside. And these houses are inside the fence. The colored part of the fence, that's the extent of Richmondville. I think we passed Sheriff in the distance, right? That was Sheriff Housing Development in the distance. But over here, this is Richmondville. Now these houses are single-family houses that were built by this housing developer, like I said, from New York. These are guys who are operating in the housing industry in New York. And what that means is that people like the Ahmads, I think in this case Ed Ahmad and Basdeo, don't remember the exact name, were allegedly involved in the housing collapse. Yes, so these guys were involved in the housing market collapse during the 2008 Great Recession. That was the time in New York and in the US in general when all of the property values collapsed. A lot of people were underwater with their mortgages, and then there were these foreclosures. It turns out that a lot of people benefited from that housing collapse, and among them was these Guyanese Americans who were real estate agents, so to speak, encouraging people to take liar loans that they couldn't afford by lying on their loan applications. And these guys made off like bandits, like made 50 million or more US dollars. However, they were charged, right? Among them were these two Guyanese investors. One of them, of course, was convicted, and he was able to come back to Guyana with a lot of that capital and use it to buy land, a lot of land in Guyana. The other guy, Baldeo, was also in courts. I don't know if he was convicted, but certainly in the courts charged with kinds of fraud in New York. And he came to Guyana and explained how he used the political system, how he used politicians. He bribed politicians to be able to obtain this land that he used to build Richmondville. Right? All of that came out in the interview that Mr. Baldeo did with, I think it was Travis Chase or someone of the local Guyanese journalists. And people have been wondering, well, what is this Richmondville? Where is it located? Well, the whole point of this video is to show you the context of Richmondville and how it is that corruption plays a part in this election cycle and all elections in Guyana, because this guy explicitly states how he was able to bribe politicians to get this land. And of course, it's always a ploy to involve politicians in scandals, somehow to affect the outcome of the vote. And that's what's happening in this voting cycle. There's a lot of scandal, political upheaval, and some of it has to do with the bribery and so on that some foreign investors have used to be able to get access to investment opportunities in Guyana. And so when you can't find land to buy, it's very difficult. For example, when I came back to Guyana, I applied for land, right? Was a plot of land to build a house. That was, what, 13 years ago, 12 years ago. I never heard from them. But you have people who are able to bribe politicians to get large tracts of land that they use now to launder money and to build structures that Guyanese can't afford, average local Guyanese can't afford. And so that is part of the scandal. It's pretty complex. It's one of the reasons why I don't usually explicitly discuss politics except when it intersects with some of the videos that I'm making. It's because it's actually quite complex to unravel. People have asked me in the past to explain the history of Guyanese politics, and I promise to sit down and explain the history of the two main political parties and how all the other political parties arose and the various coalitions that came about. But I haven't gotten around to doing so. Maybe in the future. But that's a little taste. I may follow up with this story and give you a detailed explanation of what I think is happening here. But for now, that is what is happening. That is where this location is. That is the housing development called, what's it called? Richmondville. But that's it, guys. Let me know if you want to hear more about how these political influencers, these overseas investors are influencing Guyanese politics and Guyanese development. I promise to get back to that, do some deep dives. I haven't gotten around to it, but I will eventually. But that's it for that topic. Let me talk to you about this on-ramp. Share this video with friends and family around the world. Let people know what's happening in the fastest growing country in the world, Guyana. Later!